I would say in this current volatile world, Passive House is a very reliable anchoring framework, and that Passive House is your ally. And why would we do anything else?
Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your questions answered, and contribute to the community dialogue. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our weekly Passive House Accelerator live webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast. Welcome back to the Passive House podcast. I'm Matthew Cutler and I'm joined this week by Ilka Cassidy. How are you, Ilka?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Recently back from Germany?
Yeah, I just got back. I'm still a little jet lagged.
Yeah. Which we're going to talk, not your jet lag, we're going to talk about your visit to Germany a little bit and the conference, and we're also joined by Michael Ingui. Michael, great to have you back on the podcast.
Nice to be here. Thanks.
You've been back for a little while now, back in New York?
Yeah, I've been back for a little over a week. Definitely not jet lag, but definitely still paying for the time I took off to go to the conference. It was totally well worth it, though.
And how are things going in New York at the moment?
You know, they're busy. There's a lot of work going on. There's a lot of office to resi conversions, a lot of work in the type of projects I do, which are historic retrofits. It's pretty good in New York right this second. I'm knocking on wood while we say it. It's also official biking weather finally. You know, we always have it's spring, but then winter, and then spring, and then winter. And I'm always happier when it's just spring. So it's been nice.
I feel like it's always biking weather in Auckland, but I might just be biased. All right, well, we've got some great interviews that both of you managed to get while you were in Essen recently for the International Passive House Conference, which is fantastic. We'll get straight into that fairly soon. But before we do, we've got a few people to thank, including our stakeholder partner at the Passive House Accelerator, and that is, of course, NYSERDA. Founding sponsors, 475 High Performance Building Supply, Ingui Architecture, Partel, Rockwell, and Zola Windows. And thanks also to our champion sponsors, Buizo, Cascadia Windows and Doors, Icon Windows and Doors, Intus Windows, LG, Proseco, Source 2050, and Zender. And we'd like to do a special thanks for the Accelerator Partner of the Week. This week is Bowen Build. All right. Well, as I mentioned, you are both back from Essen recently and managed to collect a whole series of interviews while you were there from a broad range of speakers and other delegates. Michael, just before we get into this, you do mention this at the beginning, but it's a little bit different format this time. But what was the genesis of the questions that you asked this first round of interviewees?
So I was able to do two talks while I was there. The first day, it was a talk really describing how to bring Passive House from niche to necessary, how to scale Passive House, and what we need to be doing in our conversations from including insurance brokers and starting to look at Passive House as a risk mitigation strategy, and starting to talk to real estate brokers, talking about the health and well-being of the occupants and how much better it is to live in these and be in these buildings and more. And I ended the talk by saying that we would be doing this podcast and we'd be interviewing people, and we really wanted to know what they were doing. What was really cool, though, about the talk wasn't actually my talk. It was the way the session was put together. The people who were talking before me and after me were talking about how they were doing a lot of the things I put in my talk. And especially the folks in Greece who went right after me were talking about how and given examples about how they were scaling. So it really fit the questions quite well. And after that, it was just kind of fun. We were able to sit down with people, go through how they're scaling, see what's happening, what's working, what we need to do more of. And the whole conference, we started to talk about that with everybody. It was a lot of fun.
All right. Well, let's get into it. Here is a small sample, I imagine, of some of those great conversations that you had from Essen.
We are in Essen, in Germany, and we just had 2 days of a big whirlwind of the International Passive House Conference. Yeah, let's think about it a little bit. You've been coming to these conferences for quite some time. What is special for you that you always decide to come back?
I think there's a few things. One, the presentations are always so good, but the other is just the conversations that you have after the presentations. It's the getting together with people and talking about different things. I have to tell you that this one felt a little different. The way they put the sessions together, the sessions themselves were really incredible. What about you?
I agree with that. And for me, the exciting part to come, and I've been coming not as long as you, but a few years now, is just the international feel of it. It feels very different than the ones in the United States, which I really like going to as well because they have a certain energy. But coming here and having grown up in Europe and Germany, it just feels so familiar to me to just hear all these languages and the accents. And I'm just always curious about, okay, what's going on in all these different countries and what is everyone working on? So that's always my motivator of coming here.
It's an incredible point. Just in some of the sessions, you've got people from Italy, you've got people from Spain, Portugal, Greece, Turkey, all sorts of different places just doing interesting things. And what's also quite exciting is how similar some of the problems they're having. And what's even better are all the different solutions they're coming up with. So I feel like I left this conference with pages of potential solutions that I can take even back for my projects in New York.
Yeah.
So I felt like you're right. It's nice to see everybody's different viewpoints. They all coming to it from a different way and for different reasons.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
a very good point.
Yeah. And you actually were here to present as well. You had 2 presentations. And the first one was all about scaling Passive House. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, thanks. And that was a fun presentation. What I wasn't expecting, though, was the way they put that session together. Started off with a number of people who were already scaling some things where they were internationally. And then I started to come in and I talked about the fact that we have to get out there. We have to talk about Passive House in a completely different way. We have to be on podcasts for real estate brokers and insurance companies and really just get out there to the tangential fields and get into it. And then right afterwards, we had the wonderful session again where they're actually doing it. And I felt like the whole session was super interesting. And it reminded me of my first Passive House conference where I thought I was going to come and talk about everything. And then I came here and everybody internationally is already kind of doing it. And that was fun. It was so much fun to kind of just be in that kind of energy and hear those stories. And again, hear solutions and ideas that everybody could take back. It was a great session.
Yeah.
I was very excited to be a part of it.
It was. And after your session, we actually talked and thought about, okay, how do we represent this conference? How do we bring across what we're feeling here to the podcast listeners, right? So the scaling Passive House became a little bit of our topic and endeavor to find out how people are actually doing it, how they're all, what their solutions are. So we decided to ask a lot of people the same questions. And those questions, let's talk about those questions because you actually came up with them and you asked those questions to your audience.
I ended my talk by asking 5 questions. I wanted to know what was scaling where they were. I wanted to know how. I wanted to know what they were doing. And because it's interesting, you're in this space and people are really doing it. So the idea was to come sit down with everybody who is scaling, see what they're doing, how they're doing it. We probably didn't get to everybody, but the thought was that by getting everybody's individual answers, we'd see some really interesting through lines. I think that happened.
Yeah. So, and the questions that we did ask are, how are you scaling Passive House? And then we also asked what is working and what else or who else should be part of this conversation. And do you have a call to action? So let's listen to what everyone had to say.
Fun stuff. Thanks.
Awesome.
My name is Tomas O'Leary. I'm the managing director of a company called Mossart. We're headquartered in Ireland, but we have services and lots of projects in the UK, in Ireland, and in the United States.
How are you scaling Passive House?
We've been doing Passive House for 20 years, and our journey started with single family dwellings, and it was a very, very, very slow burn. But I would say in the last 5 years or so, we've gotten involved with clients who are building at very large scale. So we're dealing with the largest house builder in Ireland called Cairn Homes, and we're dealing with a tier 1 contractor in Northern Ireland called Graham Construction, and they are both delivering passive houses with thousands of units per year. And this is very exciting for us because while single family houses are interesting, you're not really making a big impact in terms of lowering the emissions of the broader community, the broader built environment. So we're scaling through partnering with organizations that are doing scale anyway.
Great. And you do a lot of education teaching too, right?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. So in terms of the Passive House Designer course, we may be one of the top providers globally. I think I've trained 5,000 maybe Passive House designers. And we also delivered a Passive House tradesperson globally as well. We've trained, I think, over 1,200 Passive House tradespeople. So education, we're a very unusual firm. We're architects. Everybody understands that. We're Passive House consultants and certifiers, but we're also educators. So we have that all in the one mix. And each of those 3 services informs the other. So we're not just a training organization that does PowerPoint. Our training is informed by the projects that we're building. So we're kind of across all of the disciplines. So we recognized about 15 years ago that when you're training in the built environment, it can't just be in a hotel with PowerPoint. You've got to give people a kind of a hands-on real experience. So we started to develop training centers which had full-scale rigs where people could actually get their hands dirty and apply the tapes and feel the air leak and balance the ventilation system and all of that. And that's a kind of a trademark of what we've done. And we've been involved in training centers in the UK, across Ireland, in New York, in the Bronx, for example. So yeah, we believe for training to be impactful, it's got to have some sort of hands-on experience.
What is working?
What's working, right? So progressing from single family dwellings to doing thousands of apartment units in a year requires systems, checklists, standard operating procedures. It sounds like boring stuff, but it's basically things that you need in order to deliver for commercial clients. Commercial clients are very demanding. They don't want Passive House to be an interruption. They don't want it to be a stumbling block. So you need to run at their pace, and they're learning about Passive House. Their architects are learning about Passive House. And some of our clients have multiple active sites, 6, 7, 8 construction sites on the go at any one time. So if you don't have systems and procedures and you're just going to stumble all the time. So what we have invested a lot in the last 2 years in just trying to come up with systems and procedures to try and make this all work. And that has really made the difference for us.
Great. What else or who else should be part of this conversation?
I feel like we're often preaching to the choir, as you say in America, and I think we need to get out of our own little bubble and we have to try and sort of get other people involved. The vast majority of architects don't know about Passive House. They may have heard of it. Now, quite a few people have heard about it at this stage, but of course it sounds domestic house, and people might think, it's expensive, it's difficult, and it's really not for me. So I think we have to basically try and bring more people into the fold. And I think we have to sell the benefits of Passive House. We need to ease back on the science and the kind of nerdy bits, even though the nerdy bits are needed in the background, but we need to kind of sell it better, I think. So we need to broaden the base, get much more people involved, and I'm very excited. In Ireland now, last year, 7% of new construction is passive house. Now, all of us in the passive house community know that's a big deal. 7%, wow. But what that means is 93% of construction is not passive, right? So we can tap ourselves on the back and say, go team, 7%, but we're only scratching the surface.
What is your call to action?
I suppose my call to action to the general design community and the general developer community is, how happy are you with your projects? How happy are you with their resilience? How happy are you with the indoor air quality and comfort that you're providing your clients? How certain are you that those projects are going to, be resilient in the future? So the call to action basically is for people to step up and take a science-based approach to delivering guaranteed low emission buildings.
I'm In Cho, co-founder of the youth education nonprofit Passive House for Everyone, and we teach building energy efficiency that creates healthy and comfortable and resilient buildings for all. So I practice in New York City in the United States. I scale Passive House through the next generation, where we teach how to create healthy buildings through energy efficiency, and we scale it by going to all the New York City public schools, teaching over 1.1 million potential students that reside in New York City. We're also scaling through, we do workshops, but we're also scaling through the next generation of green building workforce. So creating training centers for our youth to be able to engage in the green building industry. This is going to be first of its kind in New York City, and it's the first one is going to start at a vocational high school called Boys and Girls High School in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. So this is a school that we've been working over 5 years with the architecture teacher there, as well as the electrical install. And because the students have loved learning about Passive House through very hands-on tactile ways, that they actually allocated a vacant classroom for us to convert into a physical training center. So here, students are going to get trained in Passive House construction techniques, and that will help them as a pathway towards the green buildings that are going to be available under New York's decarbonization mandates. Students love learning about Passive House, and they love learning it through very tactile ways. We found that to be literally the most powerful ways in which they are engaged in this topic. So I think that part, learning it through creativity, learning it through hands-on skills, that's been very effective in them engaging in the topic of building energy efficiency. I hope for ultimately all schools, all children, and even all adults, just everyone outside of our industry, to have this knowledge so that they can empower themselves. Even just a simple act of, let's say, it's drafty in the windows at the minimum, everyone knows how to air seal their windows. So I go by this motto by Howard Zinn, which is small individual acts multiplied by millions has the power to transform the world. And so that's the motto in which and philosophy that our work is based on, to empower everyone with this knowledge so that they can have their own individual acts that together can transform our built environment. My call to action would be for everyone to be able to take these individual acts to help themselves and in turn help their communities around them. So hopefully everyone will understand sustainable building practices, like the way in which everyone understands recycling as a household knowledge.
Yeah, my name is Günther Jedliczke, Early Student Housing, Vienna. I'm the CEO of Early Student Housing in Vienna, yeah. We are practicing in Austria, in all the university cities of Austria. We do passive house construction since 2005. So now we have 9 student dorms in passive house construction, 6 in Vienna, 1 in Graz, 1 in Leoben, 1 in Innsbruck, and next year 1 in Dornbirn. And yeah, we accommodate around 3,500 students per year in our passive houses. So if you scale it up to 60,000 in the last 20 years, And yeah, we only build student dorms in passive house construction. So each year, a lot of students get into touch with the idea of passive houses. So they get also one leaflet when they move in, so they know what's going on. They can behave like in a normal house, but they get this information, what's special, I would say. Yeah, that's the idea. And in addition to that, we have two summer universities, both with a topic of climate change. One is Green Building Solution. It's about how to build for the future, how to build passive houses on nearly zero energy houses. And the other one is also the topic of climate crisis, alternative economic and monetary system. The idea is what's wrong with our economic and monetary system and where are the alternatives? Well, in fact, it's working well. There is no disadvantage, I would suggest. So it's a real win-win situation. It's very convenient for us. We have high quality buildings, good architecture, and we pay less for the energy. For the students, it's also very convenient. They pay not more than in a normal student dorm. They have high quality architecture, high quality living. We have no problems with mold, always good air within, so it's good for allergics. So in fact, it's a really win-win situation. What is also very important is what we do also in Vienna is what's wrong with our economic and monetary system and what you should do, because otherwise we won't be successful in general fighting climate change. Yeah, think about what's going wrong with our monetary and financial system. And then you see that there are so many alternatives. Just to give you some, it's the Gemeinwohlökonomie, the economy for the common good, positive money or sovereign money. It's Vollgeld in German, or alternative currencies, degrowth, what Sigrid Stagel today said in their presentation. She's also partnered by our summer university, the University of Economics. And well, that's what I would suggest all the people to think about it and to make up their mind.
I'm Francesco Nesi, director of Zephyr Passive House Italy, the Italian IFA affiliate. I'm a building physicist and I'm active in the passive house sector since almost 20 years. And I'm a certifier as well as a passive house trainer and retrofit expert. We are very active not only in Italy, but also in several other parts of the world, including, for instance, Australia, India, Canada, and several other European countries. Well, the idea of scaling up passive house in Italy, as well as in many other parts of the world, let me create a sort of cost-optimal approach based on PHPP, based on the passive house tools, in order that PHPP becomes a sort of transparent cost decision-making tool for the client to choose, and also for us designers, in order to choose the best solution and strategies, both on the thermal envelope as well as on the mechanical services. The topic of scalability is quite hard in Italy, since we invested so much in the designers, and so we trained more than 5,000. But then there's a problem in the promotion of passive house. So most of the passive house are not yet certified, or they are not even passive house themselves. So for this reason, we changed our business model in early 2017, 2018, thus focusing more on the end customers and on the builders. Nowadays, speaking directly with builders finds a very good field of traction for passive house, because we can implement our design process for them and make passive house very much viable and also economically affordable. Thus, using building physics just to orient and shifting somehow costs from mechanical services to thermal envelope while keeping the overall budget the same. In Italy, we would really love having designers much more on board in an active way, much more engaged in promoting Passive House actively and convincing end customers, rather than investing so much in the communication through the builders to the end customers and then selecting the right designer after we already convinced the client, and not the other way around. This would really definitely speed up the process. And municipalities are also a very important key player who are at the moment completely absent from the scenes, the scenarios of the energy efficiency. And they should also be part of that in order for the citizens to showcase what the energy efficiency might be, starting from the public projects. Mm-hmm. To me, the most important thing as a certifier and promoter of Passive House in the world is that we shouldn't be inactive. So inactivity is really the most terrible thing. So in any case, we all should invest our efforts at all levels to promote Passive House and energy efficiency.
My name is Anne-Marie Fallon, and I'm one of the co-directors at the Passive House Trust in the UK. I am practicing in the UK, but I previously also practiced as an architect in Ireland before coming to the UK in 2012. So we have a mission at the Trust to have 10% of new builds to be Passive House certified in the UK by 2035, 1% of all retrofits in that same period to be Passive House certified, EnerPHit certified, and that 50% of the industry within the same time frame has at least had awareness training at a minimum level for Passive House as a standard. So I guess we're trying to ramp up as the affiliate in the UK, the education side of things and the sector knowledge and awareness with our members, increase our membership and our technical ability to reach out to more of the construction industry. And that means we're also outreaching to colleges and universities to look at the next generation, which are going to be super important in relation to scaling up. I think Passive House being recognised as a framework to deliver more than just carbon and energy savings is really important. So the finance markets and the insurance markets, slowly pockets are recognising that Passive House can offer resilience and improve asset value and durability over time, which is really important for those long-term investors. And that shift in the private market is really, really important to shift into bigger scale. The public sector in the UK, there's certain pockets where we are seeing a lot of governance interest in Passive House, from the quality control and execution on site to mitigate, building failure and construction quality failure. So I think that's another avenue. So seeing Passive House as a vehicle to deliver these other wider aspects and issues within the construction industry is really important. So at the Trust, we're trying to reach out and outreach to those sectors that I've talked about. So the kind of insurance, the legal, the climate risk sector, the finance sector, to help them better understand what good looks like and what quality could mean to their portfolios and to their management of risk. And then also looking at the health perspective and the indoor air quality perspective, which is really critical in the UK, especially for retrofit. We have the oldest building stock in Europe, one of the worst performing building stock in Europe. And indoor air quality and mold, given our kind of coastal Western Europe location and poor construction over the decades, is a really big factor in wanting to push it that way. And we even have legislation now protecting tenants and occupants from mold risk, which is another incentive for Passive House and Passive House retrofit to be more mainstream. I would say in this current volatile world, Passive House is a very reliable anchoring framework, and that Passive House is your ally. And why would we do anything else?
Yeah, hi, I'm Anthony Burns. So I'm from Australia, Melbourne. I have a boutique practice in Melbourne doing Passive House design, and I also dabble in software development for Passive House designers. Trying to educate my clients on Passive House and trying to do that through education on not so much the metrics of Passive House, but the benefits of Passive House. and trying to get them excited enough to tell others in their community about Passive House. Another avenue for scaling Passive House that I've tried to look at is, as a designer, I can only reach a few people at a time doing Passive House projects, but with the Passive House software, I can reach more designers, which reaches a broader cross-section of designers and passive houses. PH LiveSync started off as an in-house tool for myself, trying to streamline that process and make it more economical. Obviously, the amount of hours that I put into a project has to be paid for by my client. So if I can reduce the amount of time that I'm putting into a project by streamlining the tools that I have and the workflows, it's a better outcome for my client. And then if I can multiply that out by sharing that with the broader community, it tries to make Passive House a bit more accessible for everybody, bringing down those costs and the time involved to produce a Passive House project. So the tool is a tool specific for Autodesk Revit that links your building information model directly with the Passive House planning package, and being a direct connection between those two softwares gives you the ability to send information either from your BIM model to that Passive House planning package software for analysis, or you can actually bring information back once you've done that analysis to your model to influence your model and your design. It just leads to a more iterative design approach, and you can spend more time designing the building rather than data entry, and that sort of analysis process is a lot quicker. Policymakers, I think, still have a role to play. If we can reach out to more key people in that space, I think that will go a long way. It's all good to have clients that are enthusiastic and designers that are enthusiastic, but particularly in Australia, at a regulatory level, a baseline regulation is quite low. So to bring that up to a point where it's not that much further to go from what should be our base minimum code to a Passive House, if that gap was closed, I think that would go a long way in making Passive House more mainstream. Yeah, if the broader community could advocate for Passive House as much as possible, because the more people that know about it, the greater drive there is for change, the more people that are aware of the problems that we have with our current housing stock, not a business as usual approach, that people really realise that, hey, look, these homes aren't as healthy and as habitable as they should be. That would, I think, go a long way.
I'm Alexander Gard-Murray. I'm the Executive Director of Passive House Massachusetts. So Massachusetts has seen a huge amount of growth recently. We've gone from, right now we have 2,500 units of Passive House housing certified. We have another 35,000 in the pipeline. And that's happened from a combination of supportive codes, which cities and towns have voluntarily adopted to encourage or require Passive House, really strong supportive incentives, both for delivery and design, but also for training. And then we've got a really great community at Passive House Massachusetts, which is helping to train and troubleshoot and advocate. So the codes and incentives are working as designed. And I think people are being really generous with their time, with their lessons, with sharing, rather than clutching them as company secrets. I think community is working really well to prepare the people coming in to deliver Passive House well. So I think as we've been reflecting, we've realized that our role is not just about promoting Passive House, but it also needs to be about supporting, troubleshooting, convening, finding things that aren't working, and bringing people together to have those conversations. We've also realized it's not just about delivery, it's also about operations. So we need to bring people on the operations side, especially in large buildings, into the conversation more earlier to figure out how we design for them, how we support them to make sure these buildings are actually operating as designed. And then there's all these other challenges facing the industry in terms of energy costs, housing costs, tariffs, and thinking about how Passive House fits into those and making sure that Passive House is helping to solve those problems and people are understanding how it's solving those problems is really important. So I think we all know that buy-in is really important for Passive House. But traditionally, and if we go back 10 years in Massachusetts, a lot of that buy-in came from the energy enthusiasm of those early adopters. People were really excited to do it. And it's great that we have codes and incentives that are bringing people into Passive House for the first time, but we can't always assume that that buy-in is going to be there. So I think we need to work even harder than before to make sure we build that buy-in, and we need to go outside of our traditional community, so outside of the early adopter enthusiast community, and just outside of the building community, to make sure that policymakers and people in cities and towns all over understand how Passive House is going to deliver not just better buildings for the people who own and occupy them, but is going to make electricity cheaper on the grid through reducing peak loads. We need everyone to understand. We need to build that buy-in everywhere. And so we need to get out and do that.
This is Esra Aydinoglu from Istanbul, Turkey. I'm a practicing architect for more than 30 years. Previously, I was working for a glass business. That's how I met Passive House concept many years ago in Turkey. I was supplying the glass, the triple glazing unit for Passive House. So that's how I got involved in Passive House first. But afterwards, in 2023, I was planning to design a house and construct a house for my own family, which I planned to be a passive house. So in order to deepen my technical knowledge, I had the chance to participate in the training program and received my certification as a designer. And in 2024, in order to see the best examples and learn from the colleagues, I attended the Passive House conference, which was held in Innsbruck. And there I met some very inspirational persons, such as Incho from Passive House Everyone, Günther Jedliczke from OEAD. And suddenly I recognized that it is not enough to build my house as a passive. In Turkey, which has a very growing potential due to construction sector, I have to make a change so that everybody has to build according to the Passive House concept. After joining the Passive House conference, I decided to make a change in my pathway. Instead of building for my own, I started to share what I have learned during the conference to all the audience in Turkey, because Turkey has a huge problem of energy deficit, and the construction sector relies on the fossil fuels. And unfortunately, we have a 9 million building stock, which is not energy efficient at all. So we are actually heating and warming the climate all the time, heating the skies and warming the climate all the time. So it was time to make a change. So I started my own podcast program in order to give information, in order to share what I learned with the others. And in order to increase the potential we have, I invited people, architects, engineers, academics, or even house owners who are designing, working in a passive house or net zero energy building, so that they will share their experience and we can learn through it. At the moment, I'm at the 61 for podcast. Actually, the podcast can be found on SoundCloud or Spotify. It is very important to share information and influence others, and I try to invite to my podcast program the best practices about sustainability, and even people living inside sustainable buildings or passive house buildings, so that they can share their experience. So for scaling up, I think sharing information is the method I found. Then afterwards, after the podcast, I suddenly recognized that this is a multidisciplinary action. And a designer, an architect, a passive house designer, a passive house certifier, mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, so many consultants should come together Sometimes from project size, it might be even more than 50 consultants or 50 stakeholders at the same time. So I started to organize events, which is called Active People of Passive Buildings. And we had 4 gatherings in which we choose a project, which is a passive house, and in a multidisciplinary manner, we start a conversation, and audience who are invited, architects, engineers, or public authorities, joining us inside this conversation. This is no more a presentation on a stage. Instead, the whole venue starts to collaborate, and we try to learn from each other. And also, people have myths in their minds for passive house. So we try to break the rules, and we are trying to break the rules through communication. Due to the podcasts and also my articles in architectural and engineering publications attracted the attention of the sector. So last year in Turkey, in Istanbul, they were having a sustainability conference in which the sustainability leaders in Turkey were attending. There were about 500 guests from very, very big industrial firms. And there they invited me as an inspirational speaker. Actually, I was so excited because I am very new in the sustainability movement on behalf of Passive House. And being invited there is a very inspirational thing even for me. So because now the things I'm doing can be seen by the others. And so for 20 minutes, I told them the story of Passive House Institute, the rules of the Passive House. And I asked my first question for the audience. There were about 500 listeners. My first question was, who have heard Passive House before? There were only 5 hands raised. And I think that was my target, because that target audience knows nothing about Passive House, although they're in sustainability business. So as architects or as engineers, we should look beyond our colleagues and start to talk to others, the others who doesn't know anything about Passive House. After that conference, after my speech, many sustainability leaders came to me and take information about Passive House and ask how they can have their buildings as passive. I think the most important thing that I realized about Passive House is the health issue. The more I learned about Passive House, I recognized that health issue, even the research on health, is missing in this area. From the results that I had with the occupants of the Passive House, I realized that their health expenses are decreasing. This is very nice from 2 perspectives, that family's health and the economic perspective. But from the other part if we check from the other side, their efficiency is increasing. They have healthy kids in their house. And we may even have a healthy society through this building system. Our buildings are causing so much trouble for our health. So I think not only as a country, but as a nation, we have to stop what we have previously learned and start with Passive House rules in order to be healthy and active also, because I believe people living in Passive House, as they are healthy, as they are not suffering any health issues, they are getting older. I don't want to say older, but they are getting elder in an active manner. So I think this part is missing. We have to share some more research on the health issue in Passive House. Yesterday, during my speech, we were talking about the ongoing wars in the world. We are so sorry for it. So I added a new layer to my Active People of Passive Buildings. Previously, I added the layer active and healthy. people of passive buildings. But yesterday, after my speech, we decided that if people are living in passive buildings, peace may rule the world. So from now on, I am asking everybody, inviting to everybody, if everybody can live and work in a passive building, I believe there will be peace on the world.
My name is Ken Levenson, and I am the Executive Director of the Passive House Network based in New York City. As the Executive Director of the Passive House Network, we're really focused on capacity building, on training, on intentionally building community around knowledge sharing and partnering with other building industry knowledge communities, efficiency communities, passive house communities. I think in combination with the training, we're looking to help influence public incentives, public policy, and make the case for passive house. I think also another key component of scaling it is demystifying it so that people don't think of it as this other thing, this special thing, this thing that other people need or have to do, or is this or that or whatever, to make it familiar, to make people comfortable with it, and to make people successful with it. I think a key component of scaling passive house is getting people in passive houses. There's no better way to convince a person that they should do a passive house. Then it's a matter of training them. Also, getting people together and sharing knowledge is just super powerful in terms of scaling. We are holding our conference coming up June 4th and 5th in New Haven, Connecticut, in a certified passive house hotel, Hotel Marcel. And it's going to be amazing with people from across the United States and around the world sharing knowledge. And I think it's going to be a great exercise in seeing one tool of scaling passive house. I think the training is working. I think people executing the buildings is working. I think a lot of the components of what we're doing to grow passive house is working, but we haven't crossed certain thresholds, and we're still somehow not, accelerating as much as we would like to see accelerate. Yeah, I think an interesting group of people that have not been so integrated into what we're trying to do are the regulators, the utilities, the policymakers, the people that can, with the stroke of a pen, change the opportunities and allow passive house to take a place of greater prominence in terms of delivery. Who we should have in the conversation as well are the developers, the institutional property owners, the investment property owners, that people who are holding buildings for a long time, and the economic case for passive house is obvious, rather than trying to convince people who are really interested in holding property for relatively short terms. Even if somebody's building a home, they may sell it in 10 years. The rate that people move, they're not looking at necessarily 20, 30, 40 year horizons. If we can have more universities, more healthcare networks, more governments, more corporations that are holding property, and if we could make the economic case more clearly and more forcefully, I think it's a real pathway to growing. You see pension funds now. New York City's employee pension fund is just putting in like a couple of $2 billion into affordable housing in New York City. A lot of that's going to be passive house by virtue of what New York City's doing with it, which is a huge potential accelerant. And we need a lot more of that. That pension money is everywhere. I would say my call to action is to engage, to have the conversations, and to work to demystify it and make people comfortable.
My name is Vasilis Yiannopoulos. It's a Greek name, therefore the typical long Greek name. I'm the specifications manager for Interim in the UK, so I live and work in the UK. Our role as a company in the UK is also to service basically the customers we have in New York and Canada. Through my role, we try actually to just train architects on the qualities of the passive house suitable windows. And of course, at the same time, we try to influence decision makers in order to opt for our solutions, for our products, for the projects they design. We try using our limited means in scaling passive house to provide excellent quality of products and services, trying to optimize the ratio between cost and performance. Therefore, we try actually to make our proposals as competitive and as reasonably priced as possible. At the same time, we try to train architects, consultants, the main decision makers on the role of the windows, onto the buildings, basically the design. We try to emphasize on the crucial importance of the window systems regarding the performance of the buildings they design. It's imperative to train people. Training people provides all the essential technical skills that would enable them actually to cope them with all the challenges in all these buildings. At the same time, it gives them the confidence that A, they can cope with all these technical issues, and second, and probably most important, it makes them more enthusiastic actually to propose the passive house buildings and just talk about all these principles basically to their clients. We try to expand as a company. The people actually, we talk about all these ideas and all these principles and what can be done. I have a similar basically opinion about what's going on in the country, for instance, following basically what the Passive House Trust does in the UK. I have the feeling that if we could manage actually to have more politicians involved in the whole discussion, that would be a great help, because we could possibly expedite the whole process using basically the policy as a tool in order to approach more people and make the performance criteria something that more people actually they have to follow. Yeah. Less on a volunteer basis, but they will try actually to just comply with. This could possibly expedite the whole process. Call to action: train everyone who wants to be trained. Just talk about all these beautiful basically ideas and all these actually principles we try to, first of all, to adopt in our projects, but talk about them. And talk about, not in technical terms about numbers, talk about the experience that the occupants most likely will actually just feel themselves since they moved in or since they live in these buildings. Just try to make it more personal, try to put lots of energy in the whole thing, and just try actually to talk about the benefits of living in these buildings.
So that was quite interesting, huh?
Good stuff. And definitely some interesting through lines and stuff that everybody can take back with them.
Yeah.
And I think anybody who's listening to this, if you have other ideas, send those ideas to us. There's no reason this can't continue on the Reimagine Building Collective, where we're already talking about it continuously. You can email us, but we really do want to know how you're scaling it, whoever's listening.
Really great stuff. Ilka, you've been to a lot of the conferences now. And you mentioned it a little bit at the beginning, but looking back at this now, what were your overview? What was your thoughts on the conference?
Well, it was a great conference again. I think I mentioned that in the podcast already, that I just like how international it is and hearing all these different languages and accents. So it's just amazing to see what everyone is doing. And what's really interesting is it feels like every year there's a different country that is represented a little stronger. So this year was Turkey. So a huge group from Turkey came. So that was really, really interesting. And I feel like last time it was more Bulgaria and Romania. And before that, there were a lot of people from Australia. So it's really interesting to just see kind of the pulse of globally what's going on. So that's awesome. In general, I really liked doing the interviews this way, a little bit more of a rapid fire format. We've never really done that before, but
Yeah.
it seemed really fitting to what we're trying to do, which was showing, what everyone's doing across the world, but also how different the approaches are from
Yeah.
education. I mean, in show, I always really like hearing what she's doing with kids, young kids, educating them about passive house and energy efficiency and comfort, because it doesn't matter how early you start, they will never forget that, right?
Yeah.
Energy efficiency or comfort is always going to be something that they're going to be aware of. So that was awesome. And then hearing Günther Jedliczke from Austria just saying we're just building all these passive house student dorms. So all the students experience living in a passive house. And that's how we're trying to bring that, way of living across. And for sure, they will never forget how that feels. So I think there are just so many different ways of scaling this. And we really need all the different ways, right?
Yeah. 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 There's a lot in there. That's a really good summary. Really great to hear from Turkey. And obviously, I mean, I hear a lot about Turkey for all the wrong reasons at the moment, and that did come up. And I guess it's kind of the elephant in the room at the moment about oil and about conflict and the place for sustainable buildings, for a passive house to play a role in resilience, but also really thinking about that oil dependence, which was great to finish out with Wolfgang Feist as well, because that's kind of the genesis of a lot of these energy efficiency measures from the 1970s was a previous oil crisis, and 35 years, here we are again. People are still really thinking about this from outside of our network, thinking about, hey, how could we get ourselves weaning off this high dependency on foreign oil and gas? And then it was really interesting, there was a hint there towards the other just resilience of things like passive house and how that can be really powerful as well. So yeah, really great to hear. And of course, Turkey is hosting COP later this year as well. So some really great stuff going on, which is really encouraging to see, because that part of the world, like I say, does often get into the news for not so positive reasons. So really great to hear that some really good stuff is going on around there. Michael, really great for you to be there and to have the opportunity to speak again. Obviously, it sounds like you had a bit of influence in the content of the conference, and that was overflowed to the interviews. What were listening back to that now, what was sort of your highlights and takeaways?
I would agree with Ilka in that hearing the different ways that people are scaling wherever they are and how similar in some cases they are. I always find it interesting to be at these conferences and see the different people who felt like they were doing something that was so different from another, and then all of a sudden they're similar, and then they learn from each other, and then they're going to take that back with them. They're like, okay, well, wow, if I just did this or that. So for me, just coming into some specifics on that, there are a lot of people who are already building in such a way where they're able to get economies of scale, or they're getting better ways of building something, or faster ways of building something. You had a whole bunch of people there from Poland who were talking about how they're scaling by doing mass trainings and how they're really trying to build that up there. I found that it to be all quite exciting. When I think about past conferences where people are talking about, can we do this? How do we do this? Is it possible to do this? Right now, everybody's talking about how to scale it. And not only have they figured out how to do it, they figured out how to do it better, how to do it best. And now the question is, how do we get more people to do it? It was very exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. And announcement for next year, going back to Innsbruck. You'd be pretty excited about that, Ilka?
Yeah, Innsbruck. It was the location for the conference 2 years ago, and it was very enjoyable.
Yeah. Well, we'll look forward to that. And there's a lot of other events coming up. I know regional passive house events continue around the world as well. So lots of really good stuff going on. Also, good stuff going on over at Reimagine Buildings. Check that out. All the information over at Passive House Accelerator. This week is Designing for Survivability. That's on Friday, May the 15th. Looks like a really great program. So check out all the details there at Reimagine Buildings, or you can find a link to that and register at passivehouseaccelerator.com. All right. Thank you very much, Ilka and Michael, for your time at the conference and also for bringing us those great interviews. Really appreciate it. And thanks all for listening. And we'll be back next week on Passive House Podcast.